Repetition is one of the most powerful tools for remembering English vocabulary. When you learn a new word for the first time, your brain may recognize it, but that does not mean you will remember it for a long time. Without repetition, many words quickly disappear from memory. This is a normal part of how the brain works. Think about learning vocabulary, like walking on a new path in a forest. The first time you walk on the path, the grass is tall and the ground is not clear. It is difficult to see the way, but if you walk on the same path many times, the grass becomes flat and the path becomes clear. Repetition works in the same way. Each time you see, hear, or use a word, the path in your brain becomes stronger. When you repeat vocabulary regularly, your brain moves the information from short-term memory into long-term memory. Short-term memory can hold information for a short time, but long-term memory allows you to remember words for weeks, months, or even years. Repetition helps make this transition possible. Many learners try to study a large number of words in a single day. They may learn 20 or 30 new words at once. However, if they do not review these words later, they will forget most of them. Instead of learning many words at once, it is more effective to learn a smaller number of words and repeat them over several days. For example, you might learn 5 new words today. Tomorrow, you review the same 5 words again. The next day, you see them again in a sentence or hear them in a podcast. Each time you encounter the words, your brain becomes more familiar with them. After several repetitions, the words start to feel natural. Listening is a great way to repeat vocabulary. When you listen to English podcasts, stories, or conversations, you often hear the same words many times. These repeated words help reinforce your memory. Even if you do not notice the repetition consciously, your brain is learning in the background. Another useful technique is repeating sentences out loud. When you hear a sentence that includes a new word, pause the audio and repeat the sentence. Saying the sentence helps your brain remember both the word and the context in which it is used. This also improves pronunciation and speaking confidence. Writing can also support repetition. When you write a new word in a sentence, you engage your brain in a different way. Instead of only hearing the word, you actively use it. For example, if you learn the word improve, you might write a sentence like, I want to improve my English speaking skills. Writing sentences like this helps strengthen your understanding of the word. It is also helpful to review vocabulary at different times. For instance, you might review your words in the morning, again in the afternoon. These small review sessions help your brain remember the words more effectively. Another idea is to keep a small vocabulary notebook. Each time you learn a new word, write it down along with an example sentence. Later, you can review your notebook. And this simple habit creates regular repetition and makes vocabulary practice part of your routine. Technology can also help with repetition. Many learners use language apps or digital flashcards that remind them to review words at the right time. These tools are based on a method called spaced repetition. This method shows you the words just before you are likely to forget them. This timing helps strengthen memory efficiently. However, repetition does not need to be complicated. The most important thing is regular exposure to the language. Listening to English, reading short texts, speaking simple sentences, and writing a few lines each day all create opportunities to repeat vocabulary naturally. Over time, repetition builds familiarity. Words that once felt new and difficult begin to feel comfortable and easy to understand. You start recognizing them quickly when you hear them in conversations or see them in texts. Eventually, these repeated words become part of your active vocabulary. This means you can not only recognize them, but also use them when speaking or writing. This is an important step toward fluency. Repetition may sometimes feel simple, but it is extremely effective. Each small review strengthens your memory and helps your brain organize the language more clearly. By repeating vocabulary through listening, speaking, reading, and writing, you give your brain many chances to learn and remember. Step by step, these repeated experiences turn new words into familiar tools that you can use confidently in everyday communication. Shadowing is one of the most effective techniques for remembering English vocabulary while also improving pronunciation and speaking skills. Many learners study vocabulary by reading word lists or memorizing definitions, but they often forget the words quickly. Shadowing helps solve this problem because it allows you to practice vocabulary in a natural and active way. The idea of shadowing is simple. You listen to a sentence spoken by a speaker, and then you repeat that sentence out loud as soon as possible. You try to follow the speaker closely, almost like a shadow following a person. This is why the technique is called shadowing. When you practice shadowing, you are not only hearing the words, but also speaking them. This combination of listening and speaking helps your brain remember vocabulary much more effectively. Your ears hear the word, your mouth repeats it, and your brain connects the sound with the meaning. At first, shadowing may feel a little difficult. The speaker may talk faster than you expect, or you may not catch every word. This is completely normal. The goal is not to repeat everything perfectly. The goal is to practice listening carefully and trying to follow the speaker as closely as possible. A good way to begin shadowing is to start with short and simple sentences. Choose audio that is clear and spoken at a comfortable speed. English podcasts designed for learners are especially helpful because they use simple vocabulary and clear pronunciation. When you hear a sentence, listen carefully to the speaker's voice. Pay attention to how the words sound and how they connect with each other. Then repeat the sentence out loud. Try to copy the pronunciation, rhythm, and tone of the speaker. For example, imagine the speaker says, "I practice English every day to improve my vocabulary." After hearing the sentence, you repeat it out loud in the same way. You try to follow the same rhythm. By doing this, you practice the words practice, improve, and vocabulary as part of a natural sentence. Shadowing helps vocabulary stick in your memory because you learn the words in context. Instead of remembering a word alone, you remember the whole sentence where it appeared. This makes it easier to recall the word later when you want to speak. Another benefit of shadowing is that it helps you understand how English sounds in real communication. When native speakers talk, words often connect together smoothly. For example, the phrase want to may sound like gonna. Shadowing helps you hear and practice these natural speech patterns. Shadowing also improves your confidence when speaking. Many learners know vocabulary but feel unsure about how to pronounce it. By repeating sentences after a clear speaker, you practice saying the words correctly. Over time, your pronunciation becomes more natural and comfortable. One helpful strategy is to listen to a short part of audio several times. First, listen to the sentence carefully. The second time, try to repeat it with the speaker. The third time, repeat the sentence again without looking at any text. Each repetition strengthens your memory and speaking ability. Some learners also like to practice shadowing with a transcript. A transcript is the written version of the audio. Reading the transcript while listening can help you recognize the words more easily. After practicing with the transcript, you can try shadowing again without reading it. Daily practice is important. Even 10 minutes of shadowing practice each day can bring noticeable improvement. The more you repeat sentences, the more comfortable your mouth becomes with English sounds and vocabulary. You can also make shadowing part of your daily routine. For example, you might listen to a short podcast episode in the morning and repeat a few sentences out loud. Later in the day, you can listen again and repeat the sentences once more. These small practice sessions help your brain remember the vocabulary more clearly. Over time, shadowing helps you develop natural speaking habits. Words begin to come to your mind more quickly, and sentences feel easier to pronounce. Instead of translating words in your head, you start thinking and speaking more directly in English. Shadowing connects listening, speaking, and vocabulary learning in one simple exercise. By listening carefully and repeating sentences regularly, you create strong connections in your brain. These connections help vocabulary move recognition to active use with patience, and shadowing becomes a powerful tool that helps you remember English vocabulary and speak with greater confidence and fluency. Learning vocabulary in context is one of the most natural and effective ways to remember English words. Many learners try to memorize long lists of vocabulary words with their translations. While this method may help for a short time, it often becomes difficult to remember the words later, especially when trying to speak or understand real conversations. The reason is simple. When words are learned in isolation, without a situation or sentence, the brain does not always understand how the word is used. It becomes just a piece of information without a clear connection to real communication. Because of this, the word may stay in memory for a short time, but it is easy to forget. Learning vocabulary in context means learning words inside sentences. Instead of studying a single word by itself, you see how that word works with other words. This helps your brain understand the meaning more clearly and remember it more easily. For example, if you only memorize the definition, you may know that it means taking something from someone with the intention to return it. But when you hear a sentence like, "Can I borrow your book for a few days?" the meaning becomes much clearer. You also learn how the word naturally appears in a question. Another example is the word improve. If you hear a sentence such as, "I want to improve my English speaking skills," You begin to understand how the word is used in everyday conversation. The sentence also shows how improve connects with other words like skills. Context helps your brain build stronger connections between words and ideas. When vocabulary appears in a real situation, ye, our brain links the word to a meaning, a feeling, or an action. These connections make the word easier to remember later. Stories are especially helpful for learning vocabulary in context. When you listen to a story or a podcast, you follow the events and ideas step by step. Words appear naturally as part of the story. Because you understand the situation, the vocabulary becomes meaningful. For example, if a story talks about someone preparing for a trip, you may hear words like passport, ticket, airport, and luggage. All these words are connected to the idea of travel. When they appear together in a story, your brain remembers them as part of that situation. Learning vocabulary through context also helps you understand phrases and expressions. English speakers often use combinations of words that naturally belong together. These combinations are sometimes called collocations. For instance, people often say make a decision, take a break, or have a conversation. If you memorize only the individual words, it may be difficult to combine them correctly. But when you hear these phrases in context, you learn the natural way they are used. Listening to English podcasts is a great way to learn vocabulary in context. In a podcast, words appear inside complete sentences. You hear the pronunciation, rhythm, and tone of the language. This makes the learning experience more complete. Repeating sentences from podcasts can also strengthen memory. When you repeat a sentence aloud, you practice the vocabulary and the sentence structure at the same time. Your brain becomes familiar with how the words work together. Writing can also help reinforce contextual learning. Instead of writing a single word, try writing a full sentence that includes, for example, if you learn the word confident, you could write, she feels NFDNT when she speaks English. This practice helps you remember both the word and its meaning. Another helpful idea is imagining situations where the word might appear. If you learn the word appointment, you might imagine scheduling a meeting with a doctor or a teacher. Creating mental images helps your brain remember the vocabulary more clearly. It is also important to be patient when learning vocabulary in context. Sometimes you may hear a word several times before you fully understand it. Each time you hear the word again, your brain becomes more familiar with it. Gradually, the meaning becomes clear. Over time, contextual learning helps you recognize words more quickly and use them more naturally. Instead of translating every word into your native language, your brain begins to understand English directly. This shift is an important step toward fluency. When vocabulary is connected to real situations and ideas, it becomes easier to recall during conversations. Learning vocabulary in context transforms language learning from simple memorization. Words become tools for expressing ideas rather than items on a list. By listening to stories, repeating sentences, and practicing vocabulary in real situations, you allow your brain to absorb the language naturally. Step by step, your vocabulary grows stronger, your understanding improves, and your ability to communicate in English becomes more confident and natural. Building a daily vocabulary practice routine is one of the most effective ways to remember English words for a long time. Many learners study vocabulary only when they have free time or when they feel motivated. Sometimes they learn many words in one day and then stop practicing for several days. This irregular approach often makes learning slower and less effective. The human brain learns languages best through consistent exposure. When you interact with English every day, your brain becomes familiar with the sounds, patterns, and meanings of the language. Even short, daily practice sessions can create strong improvement over time. A daily routine does not need to be complicated. In fact, simple and regular activities are often the most powerful. Spending just 10 or 15 minutes each day practicing vocabulary can help your brain remember words more effectively than studying for a long time only once a week. One helpful way to build a routine is to divide your practice into small activities. These activities may include listening, reading, speaking, and reviewing vocabulary. When you combine these different skills, your brain learns the words from multiple angles. Listening is a great place to start. You can listen to a short English podcast, a simple story, or a conversation designed for learners. As you listen, pay attention to new words or phrases. Hearing vocabulary in real sentences helps you understand how the words are used in everyday communication. After listening, you can practice repeating a few sentences. This technique is often called shadowing. When you repeat sentences out loud, you strengthen your memory and improve your pronunciation at the same time. Your brain connects the sound of the word with its meaning and its place in the sentence. Reading is another helpful part of a daily vocabulary routine. Reading short texts exposes you to new words and allows you to see how they are written. Even reading a short paragraph or a few pages of a simple book can provide useful vocabulary practice. While reading, you might notice a word that is new or interesting. Instead of only looking up the meaning, try to read the entire sentence carefully. The surrounding words often help you understand the meaning of the new word. Writing can also help reinforce vocabulary learning. After listening or reading, try writing a few sentences using the new words you have learned. This step encourages active learning. Instead of only recognizing the word, you practice using it yourself. For example, if you learn the word improve, you might write a sentence like, I want to improve my English listening skills. Writing sentences like this helps move vocabulary from passive knowledge to active use. Reviewing vocabulary regularly is another important part of the routine. Without review, it is easy to forget words that you learned earlier. A quick review each day helps strengthen memory and keeps the vocabulary fresh in your mind. You can keep a small vocabulary notebook where you write down new words and example sentences. Each day, you can review a few pages and repeat the sentences out loud. This simple habit creates repetition, which is essential for long-term memory. Technology can also support daily vocabulary practice. Many language learning apps and flashcard systems use spaced repetition. This method shows you words again just before you are likely to forget them. This timing helps your brain remember vocabulary more efficiently. However, The most important element of a vocabulary routine is consistency. Even if you practice for only 10 minutes a day, regular practice helps build strong language habits. Over time, these habits become part of your daily life. It can also be helpful to connect your English practice with activities you already do. For example, you might listen to English while walking, cooking. When English becomes part of your daily environment, learning feels more natural and less like a difficult task. As you continue practicing every day, you will begin to notice small improvements. Words that once seemed new will start to feel familiar. You may recognize them more quickly when listening or reading. Eventually, you will feel comfortable using them when speaking or writing. These small improvements are signs that your routine is working. Each day of practice strengthens the connections in your brain. And B fuels a larger vocabulary. Learning a language is not about sudden progress, it is about steady growth through regular practice. By creating a simple daily vocabulary routine, you give yourself the opportunity to learn gradually and confidently. With patience and consistency, your vocabulary will expand, your understanding will deepen, and communicating in English will become easier and more natural.